Bruce, bring me a beer. Go fetch a beer, Bruce.
Unbelievable.
This is the greatest dog I've ever seen. There you go.
Forget Josh Allen. That's the MVP of the Bills right
That's
there.
fantastic is what that guy is. Nice job. Well done, Bruce the dog. There you go. By the way, Bruce the dog better trained than, half our staff.
Wow. Wow.
Half of our staff. Half of our staff. Half of our staff.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour and a happy Halloween to everybody. I'm a little nervous that I'm going to be the beer fetcher now that Bruce the dog is gone.
Come on, Connor.
My role's going to be relegated down to that.
We should have worn scary stuff today. You should have worn your Zach Wilson jersey.
Yeah, that was good. We were ready for that one. Yeah, scary hours for the Jets. We'll get there. Don't worry, we'll get there. But we have to start with some horror movies versus NFL players that,
yes.
Jay, I've heard you priced these.
I did price these, yes. I'm a horror film aficionado.
Yes.
It's right up my alley.
Yeah, God, man. In the spirit of Halloween, let's start with Jason from Halloween to stop Josh Allen at the goal line at...
Yeah, plus 200. I know the Titans
plus
were able
money.
The Titans were able to do this in that Monday night game last year, but MVP season for Josh Allen despite that dog coming for his trophy. But I think that Josh Allen is the favorite here despite the terrifying Jason Voorhees of the Friday the 13th films.
Yeah, I think anything Bills related right now, they are going to be the favorite for quite some time, maybe even by double digits as we head deeper into this season. All right, another one, Dameon Pierce to escape Leatherface. This is getting darker.
Yeah, I made this one minus 110. Pick either side. Tough one to price. I'm not sure why Dameon Pierce was the running back that NBC Social chose, but we'll go with it. And look, you would think that Dameon Pierce would outrun Leatherface, but Leatherface has a habit of just showing up when you least expect him. So that's why it's pick.
Yeah, and we know the Texans' offensive line isn't going to protect him from Leatherface either. We could always count on that. And forget the threat of Davis Mills throwing the ball in this situation. All right, another good one here. Freddy Krueger to end the Eagles' dream season. Minus 150 because it looks like nothing is stopping the Eagles right now.
Yes, Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street, not Freddie Mercury, as producer Brian thought that was the character from Nightmare on Elm Street.
That'd be a different situation.
I'm making Freddie favorite here. I don't believe in the Eagles as the 7-0 juggernaut. I believe they're an excellent team, but Freddy Krueger is going to be a tougher game on their schedule than anyone the rest of the way, so I will say Freddie gets the win there.
One I've never heard of, the Grabber.
Yeah.
The Grabber to track down Lamar Jackson in the pocket at minus 130.
Yeah, played by Ethan Hawke, one of my favorites, big before sunrise, Gattaca type of guy. I'm making the Grabber a slight favorite in this matchup, minus 130. Lamar Jackson loves to run around in the pocket and get himself sacked, so we'll make Ethan Hawke favorite there.
Let's get into the Roto World headlines. We've had a lot of fun with the Halloween nonsense, and we hope you have too on this day. But plenty went on in Week 8 of the NFL. The running backs went wild this week. It was a slow start to the year, especially for the premium running backs. Now we have guys that might have been on the waiver wire just 2 weeks ago and players that were drafted significantly early as we take a look here. Alvin Kamara outscoring, I think, everybody this weekend in fantasy, 42.8 points. I mean, when you look at this board, Jay, it's kind of an interesting group of names with some surprises, but the big dogs, the big three, Kamara, McCaffrey, and Henry, back on top.
Yeah, superstars, and then I don't want to say scrubs, but just guys that you wouldn't have expected. In Tony Pollard, I think Deonta Foreman is the epitome of that. Travis Etienne as well. He might be a top 5 running back going forward if they continue to give him that workload. And then Antonio Gibson coming in at number 10, the forgotten man, Antonio Gibson, who kind of took over the backfield a little bit over Brian Robinson. Jamal Williams, also a surprise name in there at 8th, 22.6 points for Jamal.
Yeah, DeAndre Swift back, but that didn't slow down Jamal Williams. Let's start with Derrick Henry, who dominated the Texans again. I mean, there is no workhorse like Derrick Henry. 32 rush attempts, over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. And all he does, Jay, is crush the Houston Texans.
He does crush the Houston Texans. It's getting absurd now. 4 games, 200-plus yards against the Texans, the past 4. I think the thing with Henry is that it's just about his usage. And we see on screen now what he's done to Houston in the last 4 games, going 212-plus minimum. Each of those 4 with a minimum of 2 touchdowns in each game, minimum of 35 fantasy points as well. He just eats up that team. And if you look at this season specifically, 5 weeks in a row of 20-plus carries. He's just a lock for absurd usage because they don't have any wide receivers. They're not great in pass protection, but they're good at run blocking. Tannehill's never going to be a guy who drops back throws at 40 times. So, I mean, Derrick Henry, who right now is equal second with Christian McCaffrey in terms of fantasy points per game in PPR leagues, just behind Austin Eckler. I think you just have to project him as the best runner in the league going forward again, which is a surprise because before the season I was very concerned about Henry, but he's made me look very silly.
Yeah, Mike Vrabel had this to say: the difference between this team and the league is that we have Derrick Henry. It's as simple as that. With all that being said, Jay, would you make him the favorite to lead the NFL in rushing right now? I mean, this usage is, we know Derrick Henry is built for this, but we are back to square one where it's just Derrick Henry's getting the ball. You know it. We know it. Good luck stopping it.
Yeah, I think he should be the favorite going forward just because he's a lock for this kind of usage in ways that everyone else is not. I mean, Saquon Barkley, the first 3 series yesterday against the Seahawks, he got 1 carry. That's just never going to happen with Derrick Henry. He's just going to get the ball on first down, second down, and then they'll throw it on third if they have to, or they might just run him again. So I think he should be the favorite. He's 24 yards behind Saquon right now, but he's got the game in hand because the Titans have already had their bye. So I think he should be the favorite. Nick Chubb is obviously the other guy in that mix. Josh Jacobs maybe if the Raiders figure themselves out. But I think Henry should be the favorite.
We had quite a few backs with 3 touchdown performances yesterday, just lighting up the scoreboard. And that was not the case for Alvin Kamara for much of the season. It felt like Alvin Kamara was never getting into the end zone. He fell in 3 times. We said it, over 40 points, 27 touches. The Saints now have scored 24 points in 5 straight games. They shut out the Raiders yesterday, so a formula for Kamara to get even more work. Are you buying into the Saints offense with this hot stretch they're going through?
I kind of am. And Kamara, he's a big part of it. He looked more like Alvin Kamara than he has in 2 years. He looked like the guy who had 5 touchdowns against the Vikings on Christmas. That was the type of explosion that he was showing. And I do believe in this Saints team, weirdly. I'm off the Panthers. They broke my heart in the NFC South. My new NFC South team is the Saints.
You're going to go through all of them at this point.
Let's go through all of them. Yeah, Falcons. I will never go for the Bucs. But I do think the strange thing about the Saints is that coming into yesterday, Andy Dalton had the 3rd highest PFF grade of any quarterback in the league. The only 2 guys in front of him, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. So,
well, that's what they always say, Andy Dalton.
Yeah, Allen, Mahomes, who are you going to take? Well, it depends on the matchup. Maybe you take Dalton. But I think that there is something there where he has played a lot better than expected. It's telling that even after those 2 pick sixes that they went back to him over Jameis. The O-line is solid. Olave is an elite talent. And Kamara is reaping the benefits of a better offense.
It feels like the Saints just got tired of having a potentially high-variance offense. I know that seems ridiculous to say when you look at Dalton throwing the 2 pick sixes in that game. But with Jameis, that's what it is, a high-variance offense. With Dalton, it feels like they understand how to get the ball in their playmakers' hands. Olave had a solid week, not a great week, but they consistently know how to run the offense with him back there, even if it's not always inspiring.
Yep, and the Saints are plus 450 to win the NFC South. They got the same record as the Bucs, a game behind of the Atlanta Falcons, who are somehow in sole possession of first place. So I like the Saints there. I think that should be more like plus 300.
Another 3-touchdown performer in an unconventional way, Christian McCaffrey. It has not taken much time for the 49ers to figure out how to use him. And let's hear what McCaffrey had to say after the game about his 3-touchdown day.
Both my little brothers are quarterbacks, so I learned a lot from them. But, I used to always want to play quarterback just because it was, the best position. But I've been a running back since I was 7. You got to get that elbow up, You got to get loose, get the elbow up, and it helps when someone's wide open as well.
McCaffrey, the first running back to have a receiving, rushing, and passing touchdown, as you heard him on that there, since LaDainian Tomlinson in 2005, Jay. I mean, obviously this isn't necessarily sustainable, but the biggest takeaway is, and we said this when the trade happened, if you can hand-pick a place for McCaffrey to go and be what everybody expects when they draft him top 2 in fantasy every year, it would be with Kyle Shanahan.
Let's talk about the throw. The throw was amazing. It should have been, if the Niners had Christian McCaffrey throwing that deep ball to Emmanuel Sanders in the Super Bowl in the late 4th quarter, they'd be Super Bowl champions. It was a better throw than I've seen Jimmy Garoppolo make in years. Look, I think McCaffrey, he's everything as advertised. I think you probably project him as the best running back in fantasy going forward just because of the versatility of that offense and the usage that he's getting. I mean, there was a time yesterday, Connor, when the Rams were up 14-7 and they were favorite live in that game at that point, and the Niners were teetering. It's like, are they going to be 3-5? Are they going to be traded for McCaffrey for nothing? And then they just turn it on. McCaffrey makes that touch fittingly to give them the lead, where he looks like Cooper Kupp going up for that ball in the end zone. So, I mean, there's not much to say. He's just a monster. It's fitting that, we're making stat comparisons to LaDainian Tomlinson because, he is an elite player and elite fantasy player.
And that's not where the bizarre McCaffrey day ended. He had more fantasy points across the board than a lot of different guys, as you see here from Mason. As a passer, CMC outscored Derek Carr. As a rusher, CMC outscored Jonathan Taylor. As a receiver, CMC outscored Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, that's not too bad. And also, I just think with that Niners defense as well, it's all clicking into place for them. They're looking like a force in the NFC.
They really are. I mean, we talked about earlier, the Niners, they start off slow. Now they potentially have a defensive player of the year in Nick Bosa, who got his 8th sack yesterday. You have CMC on the other side of the ball. This was without Deebo Samuel, who was one of the best players in the NFL last year and has looked fine this year. When you factor all that in, Jay, where are you with this Niners team? Because the NFC, besides the Eagles, has been this giant toss-up.
Yeah, to me, the NFC right now is 3 teams. I think the Eagles should be favourite just because they've got such a clear path to the bye, which is so significant. But then after them, I think it's the Niners and the Cowboys. Those are the teams with real upside just because of their defenses, because of the skill position weapons that they have. Dak looked a lot better yesterday than he did against the Lions. So those are the 2 teams I'm most interested in, but the Eagles still should be the favourite.
Speaking of those Cowboys, Tony Pollard had himself a day with Ezekiel Elliott sidelined with a knee injury, another 3-touchdown scorer. But Jerry Jones, after the game, maybe not convinced.
I don't know. No, there's no argument. Zeke's ability to punish, Zeke's ability to deliver it, Zeke's ability to what he does for us in pass protection, and frankly, Zeke's ability to make big plays are there, and we're going to go as Zeke goes. I really mean he's that integral to our success this year.
As we know, every day is Halloween for Jerry Jones. When Dak gets hurt, he gets to be a doctor. When Tony Pollard goes off, he gets to be the coach and say that Zeke's coming back. And right around the draft, he loves to be a scout.
That's good. That's good material there, Connor. I like that.
I'm working on my stand-up. Too scared to go on stage.
Yeah. I think, that fills you a lot of confidence as a Cowboys fan, doesn't it? It's, look, he's not the coach, but I do think that Zeke will continue to get fed. Maybe it'll be closer to 50-50 after what Pollard showed, but at the same time, you would definitely make Zeke the favorite to get more work, which I don't think is correct, and I don't think there's any argument that that's correct. Yes, if Pollard, the whole thing with Tony Pollard has been that his body can't hold up to a workhorse load. That's fine. Don't give him a workhorse load. Just give him 60% of the carries.
And do we think that's 25. True, by the way?
I don't think it's true either.
Like, that seems like something that just came out of thin air that everybody says because of, honestly, his aesthetic.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, he's not.
If he wore a neck roll and a visor, everybody would be like, Tony Pollard needs 45 carries every week.
Exactly. And also, can we prove it wrong first? Can we see that can he not deliver when he gets a big workload? Because that's the thing at the moment is that whenever he does get the chance, he just takes it. He's the 3rd best running back in the league by PFF grade. The eye test matches up with that. He's just a freak. So I do think the Cowboys are limiting themselves. And fantasy-wise, it just makes it a nightmare. I mean, I think both of these guys are probably startable. Pollard probably, or both of them really as flex guys going forward. But yeah, I think the Cowboys would be much better served giving Pollard more piece of the pie.
Yeah, I feel like it's tough to sell high on Tony Pollard because I think everybody is in tune with that Ezekiel Elliott is always a factor here, no matter how good Tony looks. I mean, Pollard has 2 career games without Ezekiel Elliott, 279 yards, 5 total touchdowns. Yeah, we know what he is. Now, the one thing you have to, and I'll throw this to you, Jay, do you project in that knee injuries that aren't season-ending often do linger, and you can get sore, you could be limited, you could miss time? Jerry Jones is not the coach of this team. The coaching staff and the medical staff's dealing with Ezekiel Elliott that maybe you do hold on to Tony Pollard because if Zeke misses more time, this is a guy that can win you a league.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, even if Zeke doesn't miss that much more time, like he might just be limited, he might be banged up, maybe they just reduce his workload, could be a blessing in disguise for the Cowboys and their offense, honestly, that, this injury does give them an excuse politically to be able to give more of the offense to Tony Pollard. So, look, I think it's really hard to sell high on Tony Pollard because everyone knows that Zeke is coming back. No one's expecting this as the baseline. So I think you're probably probably better off just holding on to him and hoping that he takes more control of the offense.
We started this segment with household names. Derrick Henry, superstar in fantasy. Alvin Kamara, of course, as well. Christian McCaffrey, we know all about him. Tony Pollard's been a very popular name. D'Onta Foreman from the Panthers. I think the question was, as soon as McCaffrey got traded, it was, who do you pick up? And are there any expectations this team's going to be bad? Is it Chuba Hubbard? Is it Foreman? Obviously, Chuba Hubbard missed this game, which led to a high usage for Foreman with 26 rush attempts, 3 touchdowns. But I don't think the question, Jay, is can he keep this up? Because that's not fair. But can he be a reliable RB2 down the stretch? It's starting to lean that way.
I think it's more a question, can he be an RB1?
Yeah.
I think he is an RB2 at this point. 118 yards in back-to-back games. He's just must start until proven otherwise. And I think the best thing for D'Onta Foreman is that P.J. Walker looks like a real quarterback at the moment. I know he didn't have a great completion percentage, but he's moving the chains. He's moving the offense in a way that it was so hopeless with Baker Mayfield that he gives this offense more of a ceiling. There's more running room with the spacing that P.J. Walker is providing. And with the Panthers, I think they're like a 7-10 level quality team going forward, not the disaster 4-13 win team that you project them as a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah, I think D'Onta Foreman is going to be relevant the rest of the year.
That's a big difference. This was a team that when Matt Rule was fired, everybody wrote in at least pencil, sometimes ink, to be picking in the top 2. They're going to get their quarterback. They're going to stink the rest of the year. And when you're bad and playing from behind, you're not going to run the ball. But that's been the opposite with P.J. Walker in there. All right, back to a team that we know is really, really good. The Philadelphia Eagles look unstoppable at this point. Not a surprise. The Steelers' defense, especially without T.J. Watt, just couldn't put up a fight against this team. A.J. Brown, him and Jalen Hurts right now are in sync, unlike most quarterback-wide receiver connections in the NFL. Do you think this is how it's just going to be the entire year at this point?
I think so. And I think it's a shame in a way that we don't get to see A.J. Brown on a team like Minnesota or Miami in place of Tyreek Hill and just see him be the number one guy in a passing offense, because obviously he was on Derrick Henry's team. Now he's on an Eagles team that is a bit more progressive with the pass, but they're still a running team. They still want to run the ball. And I think that A.J. Brown, he might be on the same level talent-wise as Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs. He just doesn't get the volume. Obviously, he got the volume on Sunday, and I think the Eagles, with their schedule, which is a complete farce, I think he's going to continue to be in situations where he can light up other bad teams. We were talking before the show, Connor, about we might not find out if the Eagles are legitimately good until the Super Bowl when they play the Bills or the Chiefs.
Maybe NFC Championship game if we're lucky.
Yeah, maybe if they get the Niners or Cowboys. Now, they do play at Cowboys in Week 16, but outside of that, they're going to be clear favorites in every single game the rest of the season. Fittingly, their next game is at the Texans. It feels like they play at the Texans or at the Commanders every single week. But yeah, look, they're a juggernaut. They're very, very good. When I talk about them being legitimately good, it's just, are they in the same class as Buffalo or are they a tier down?
Man, it's just absolutely crazy when you look at that schedule. And I think that makes you wonder with Jalen Hurts, he's on cruise control. 4 touchdowns yesterday, almost 30 fantasy points. Like you said, the usage of A.J. Brown, who led the team in targets with 10, was at an all-time high. When you're on a team that's going to win 15 games?
Yeah.
I mean, we're sitting here after Week 8 and setting comfortably. They're going to win 14, 15 games. Is Jalen Hurts on the path to win the MVP at this point?
I mean, if you just look at the team's record and his stats and the remaining schedule, you'd say he's definitely in the mix. I would still make Josh Allen the favorite, and he is the favorite on BetMGM. I just think that when it comes down to it, everyone knows that Josh Allen is better than Jalen Hurts, right? Everyone knows that. There's no one taking Jalen Hurts over Josh Allen, and I do think that voters will have a real tough time being like, no, I'm going to give it to Jalen Hurts, because the Eagles went 16-1 and the Bills went 14-3. I just think at the end of the day that it just feels like Josh Allen's season. It feels like Buffalo's season, and that he will get it in the end. But Jalen Hurts is certainly making a case.
And the Bills never stop throwing the ball. It doesn't matter the game script, the game flow, the score of the game. They never stop throwing the ball. No. I think there's some desire to get him that MVP.
I think so too. The only thing with the one concern with Allen is that his numbers fall off every year when it gets colder in Buffalo, as you would expect. So he might not, he's not going to throw for 6,000 yards or whatever, which looked like it might be in play a couple of weeks ago. So his counting stats might fall off, but that team's a juggernaut. They're the best team in the NFL, and I think he'll be the MVP.
The running backs that we started the show with have become the no-brainers. You play them, you love having them, enjoy, reap the benefits. There's some headache backfields, though. And one that I think if we had this conversation in July, people would look at you like you're insane. The Detroit Lions. Everybody would say DeAndre Swift is the guy. Jamal Williams, they might get cute, even at the goal line. He's a great pass-protecting running back. Things have changed, Jay. I mean, DeAndre Swift got hurt, which that happens. But now he's back and maybe still banged up. Jamal Williams is still a huge factor here. I guess the question is, can this backfield carry these two? Because they are getting their points, but Jamal Williams is getting the bulk of the touchdown work.
Yeah, I think, look, DeAndre Swift will be fine. I still think he's going to be the featured back once he's healthier. And look, it's his first game back and he only had 5 carries. That's not great, but let's give it one more week with DeAndre Swift, one more week off the injury to see how he does. But I do think that the interesting thing is that Jamal Williams might be startable each week anyway, even if DeAndre Swift does take control of the backfield, just because he is getting carries at the goal line. And this Detroit offense, yes, they put up a goose egg in New England, but now they're healthier. Amon-Ra St. Brown back, DeAndre Swift back. I do think this is going to be a very fantasy-friendly offense that could support 2 running backs.
Staying in the division, but moving over to a different backfield that's gotten a little bit more interesting recently. It was not the way the first couple weeks. The Chicago Bears, David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, who it always feels like Herbert has a little bit of that Tony Pollard effect where when he gets a few touches and has the big play, everybody's, including myself, I know I'm guilty of it, sit there and scream, more Khalil Herbert, more Khalil Herbert. And it felt like as long as Montgomery plays, that was never going to happen. But yesterday, we're starting to see that slowly unfold where this is a team that does want Khalil Herbert to at least be getting 50% of those carries.
Yeah, and I think that I would rather have Herbert going forward the rest of the way, even if the average outcome is that David Montgomery is slightly better than Khalil Herbert on average, just the upside of Herbert, who can have weeks where he is an RB1 or a high-end RB2. I just think that you have that upside in Herbert that you don't get with Montgomery. Promisingly, it looks like it's shifting that way. And look, the Bears offense overall, 29 points against Dallas, vaunted Dallas defense, after 33 points against a pretty solid New England defense too. I mean, things are trending in the right direction. And I want to ask you about Justin Fields, who looked phenomenal against Dallas, as he did against the Patriots. I mean, phenomenal. He looked very good.
Yeah.
Would you rather have Justin Fields as an NFL team going forward or Trevor Lawrence?
It's a great question. I think what I love about Fields and what I love about a lot of quarterbacks that have this kind of running ability, running, if you have the right staff, and it took this staff a while to figure this out, running can buy you time to develop as a passer in this league. It gives you more time to figure things out. It stresses the defense. It makes the linebackers cheat up, and maybe even the safeties cheat up, and it opens the rest of the field. And we saw that for years with Lamar Jackson, who developed in a great way as a passer while using his legs to do that. We saw it with Jalen Hurts. Both those guys used that time as runners to develop into passers, and you can make that argument for Justin Fields right now. I still think Trevor Lawrence was a special talent, and I would still, to answer the question, I would still take Trevor Lawrence because I think he's just always going to be a more gifted thrower. But the head-scratching mistakes with all of these quarterbacks, him, Zach Wilson, Fields has figured it out lately, needs to get a longer stretch, but Mac Jones, that's the big thing that they need to evade. And once again, I can't say it enough, running buys you out of those mistakes. When you look at Fields, he has 60-plus rushing yards in 3 straight games. I watched back yesterday's game. 5 of the 8 rush attempts that he had were designed runs.
Yep.
And they're in the red zone, which, Jay, when you hear that, does his rushing upside make him a top 10 fantasy quarterback the rest of the season now?
I think so, or at least he's very much in that mix. Last week I said I'd rather have Brady over Fields the rest of the way. Not anymore. I'd rather have Fields. After now we've got another week of this sample of him really producing. And it is obviously it's the rushing, but he's even looking better as a passer now. And, to your point about the league and the way it's going, to me, the most interesting thing in the NFL right now is that teams are playing 2 high safety more than ever before. They're playing quarters more than ever before. There's never been a more efficient time in NFL history to run the ball than right now, where rushing efficiency is starting to match passing efficiency. That's why you're not seeing these deep plays as much, just because teams are taking that away. And so Fields' rushing element there just makes him all the more special. And fantasy-wise, yeah, I think he is a top 10 quarterback.
I'm with you all the way. Top 12 finish the last 4 weeks, and like you said, the trajectory is showing him getting better, and I think most importantly, a play caller that is finally maximizing his strength, something he never had last year and something he didn't have the first couple of weeks of this year. So a good trend for Justin Fields. We are going to take a break, but when we are back, Lawrence Jackson from Roto-World is joining us for some Sunday Scaries in the tradition of Halloween. Download the Roto-World app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster and get the latest injury updates, player news, plus much more delivered right to your phone. Available in your app store today. Time to go over the Sunday Scaries. We do this every week, not just for Halloween, but who better to have here than Roto-World's Lawrence Jackson. Lawrence, what's up, man?
What's going on, man? I can't call it. This weekend in fantasy was great, right? But it was also a week where if your team scored 150, 160 points, you might have lost the game.
Yeah,
So
seriously.
It could be brutal and it could be great all at the same time with all the touchdowns that was being scored. But obviously, we're here for the scary, so it wasn't all good.
Sorry, Lawrence, we bring you in for the bad news, and we have to call it like we see it. We'll start with Jonathan Taylor. I think perspective is needed, right, fellas, with Jonathan Taylor. You didn't draft him to be just a guy. 16 rushes, 76 rushing yards, the lost fumble, a 5.6 fantasy game, on and off the field with the ankle injury. I just think, Lawrence, the expectations compared to what we've gotten have to be a massive letdown so far.
Yeah, if you drafted Jonathan Taylor, you got every right to be mad right now, right? Now, 16 carries for 76 yards. This any other running back be like, yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
We got some hope or whatever. But not for Jonathan Taylor, who's currently running back 33 in fantasy with guys like James Robinson, Kareem Hunt, and Michael Carter ahead of him. So clearly you can't bench him, you know what I'm saying? But he's not that top 3 running back that you hope for. The Colts offense is kind of struggling as a whole regardless. They just got the new quarterback, but you have no choice but to stick with it or trade him. I actually just traded for him thinking that he was going to go off versus Washington, but the fumble, getting stuffed at the goal line, like you mentioned, the ankle. So it's all up in the air, but you got to keep playing him.
What'd you trade to get him? Where's the market at right now?
So I gave away Devontae. So I got Tyreek Hill and Jonathan Taylor. So I got some good in it. Right? So, and I was desperate for a running back, but I gave up Devontae Adams and Jalen Waddle and Tua to get Jonathan Taylor and Tyreek Hill. Yeah, so we was both, both. I'm good with Tyreek.
Jay, we saw a little more life with the quarterback switch to this offense. Nothing incredible. We know Sam Ehlinger is a little limited, but we saw a little bit of life. Is there any hope to buy into the bounce back for JT?
I'd just be most concerned about the ankle. He just doesn't look right. Doesn't look like the same guy, and he needs to be the same guy because he's behind sneakily one of the worst offensive lines in all of football. Matt Pryor is a complete disaster, a tackle at the moment. They're having to rejigger their offensive line. I mean, I do think there is upside just because when he has been healthy, he has gotten the same volume he did last year. But just between the team, the offense, and the ankle, you're not feeling good about Jonathan Taylor, but you just have to grit and bear it.
Fellas, you never want to be on the Sunday Scaries list as a player. You definitely don't want to be on it as a team. The Las Vegas Raiders offense makes the Sunday Scaries list. Let's look at what they did, or maybe say did not do, against the Saints. And I think you just have to start at the quarterback, of course, with this offense. Derek Carr right now, 0 games with 20 fantasy points this season. I mean, Jay, is he no longer fantasy viable? Like where you... I forget starting him. Is he even a backup on your roster at this point? I
mean, I think he's okay to have as a backup just because they still do have, on paper, what should be a pretty deep array of skill position guys. But, yeah, I mean, the crazy thing about that game is they didn't cross midfield on offense until there were 3.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, which is just insane. But, look, I think
it's hard to do.
You can't throw that game out. You can't throw out a game that bad. But at the same time, no Darren Waller, Devontae Adams clearly wasn't anywhere close to himself. Game got out of hand quickly, so Josh Jacobs couldn't really assert himself, so they're not going to be that bad going forward. But certainly, Carr was a guy that you thought could maybe be a fringe top 10 quarterback. Now it's like he's a fringe top 20 quarterback.
Coming into the season, Jay, I definitely thought he was a fringe top 10 quarterback from a fantasy perspective. Now, when we talk about the whole offense, I would say it would be him. That's who I'm worried about the most. Because you look at the bad game from Adams, and then you look at the bad game from Josh Jacobs, but you go to what they done the prior 3 weeks. Like Adams is over 105 yards in those 3 games. Josh Jacobs, 140 rushing yards. But Derek Carr in the past 4 games is not averaging over 200 passing yards.
Yep.
So, he got to kind of get it together for them to cross the midfield point. But just watching that game and even coming into the game, the over-under was near 50. 49-50. I'm like, all right, cool. Nice little shootout. Let me throw Hunter Renfrow in the DFS lineup. I got nothing there. But, Derek Carr's going to have to give us some more to help elevate the offense as a whole.
Are we at the point, too, where we have to have questions about Josh McDaniels as a head coach? Because obviously this is his second stint. It doesn't look right, where it could impact the rest of this offense. I mean, Devontae Adams, this is his worst fantasy performance since 2015 and the worst he's ever had in a game where he ran 25 routes.
Yeah, I mean, well, the Raiders are 2-5, so you got to be looking at the head coach in that situation. You make all these moves, and we could even go over to the defense. They brought over Chandler Jones. Max Crosby's still a baller, right? So, yeah, we got to start looking at the head coach in this situation. When you got all these weapons, they're getting numbers, but they're not winning the game. So to get away from a fantasy perspective real quick, you have to look at all of those things. We're putting up the numbers. We got players on defense, but we 2-5.
Yeah, at Jacksonville next week. I mean, both of their seasons are probably done anyway, but the loser of that game is definitely done.
Oof, good Lord. All right, staying within the division, the Broncos, we're out in London. This offense has just really, really struggled, and Courtland Sutton has been a part of those struggles. 4 targets, 1 catch for 13 yards, only 2.3 fantasy points. Listen, wide receivers have bad games, but this is coming off a game where Courtland Sutton couldn't get anything going against Sauce Gardner. Jerry Jeudy getting more of the work here. Has Sutton moved down into flex territory, Jay?
I think so. I mean, he's had 50 receiving yards in the past 3 weeks. That's 50 total, not average. It's total. So that's a disaster. I mean, you still have to start Courtland Sutton, but I think he's more of a flex guy, to your point, Connor. And look, the thing is as well, the Broncos haven't even reached the hard part of their schedule. Like, it's going to get worse for them. Where their last 6 weeks of the season, they play at Baltimore, 2 games against Kansas City, Chargers, Arizona, and the Rams. That's a brutal finish to the season. So, I'm not looking forward to Broncos football the rest of the way. And at this point, I'd still rather have Sutton over Jeudy, I think, but it's close.
Lawrence, when you hear that, do you have to start Courtland Sutton? I mean, the schedule's bad. The quarterback play is somehow worse. There's not a lot to be hopeful here.
What Jay just said, man, that's something you don't want to hear on Halloween.
Yeah.
You know,
Sunday Scaries turned into season-long Scaries.
And what makes it even worse is, right, you go weeks 1 through 4. Courtland Sutton was wide receiver 11 in fantasy. The past 4 weeks, he wide receiver 68. So it's like Courtland, no targets all of a sudden. That's what his name is now. You know what I'm saying?
Very good, Lawrence. There you go. Bang.
If we're talking about Jeudy and Sutton, it's like we're talking about them both like who should I put in the flex? And if you talking about them two, you probably hurting. But I like how Judy's become more of a factor with 2 different quarterbacks. That's even more telling that they've had Brett Rippon start 1 week. Now you got Russell Wilson back, but it's still Jeudy clocking the numbers, and we can't leave out Greg Dulcich now, right?
Yeah, the Greg Dulcich.
He's averaging 60 yards in his 3 games, so that's factoring in, and that's taken away from him as well. So it's going to be tough. Like, I'm starting Sutton if I absolutely have to at this point because you don't know what you're going to get from him or the Broncos offense.
Yeah, I think you say a Hail Mary that Jerry Jeudy gets traded in the next 24 hours. So
that changed everything.
More targets for Sutton. Maybe Judy's in a better, more quarterback-friendly situation. Brian Robinson, the Washington Commanders want him to be a thing. They tried really hard to make him a thing. This week, though, only 8 rushes, 20 yards. He doesn't factor in the pass game because Antonio Gibson is the pass game, especially since Taylor Heineke took over. Is Gibson now the guy you want once again, Lawrence? It feels like we just go through this roller coaster. You want Gibson, you want Robinson, now you want Gibson again.
We talked about it last week and talked about how the coach should be a team that Brian Robinson could run on, but you just can't deny the fact that Gibson is the more efficient player when he has the ball. Add into the fact the past 2 games that Heineke's been in the game, he's also an effective runner in his own right, so that's taking away production from Robinson. Then they're using J.D. McKissick. The past 2 games in which Tyler Heineke's been starting, Gibson is running back 11 to Brian Robinson's 39 actually, and he's got the 1 touchdown on the season. So I would say it has to be Gibson. The Commanders don't want it to be Gibson, but if you're playing fantasy, you want it to be Gibson.
Another team that makes the Sunday Scaries list, Jay, your New York Jets. Your New York, they are now yours and only yours, New York Jets. Zach Wilson, good fantasy day, terrible real-life day. He had 355 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. Guess who had no part in that at all? Let's hear from Elijah Moore.
How would you describe your chemistry with Zach on the field?
Probably, I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you. I don't get the ball. I don't know.
You got to love honesty. Elijah Moore,
I love it.
1 target, no catches, no yards. That equals 0 points. Some serious calculus over here. I mean, we have to hold on. If you held on this long to Elijah Moore, wait till the trade deadline. Just wait the 24 hours. See if he goes to the Packers, anywhere but the Jets right now. And here's the bigger thing, guys. The snap count. This is not an offense where nobody's doing it. Garrett Wilson is heavily involved. Garrett Wilson, Denzel Mims played the starter reps. Garrett Wilson had over 100 yards. Mims had over 75 yards. But Braxton Berrios and Jeff Smith. I think a lot of people that have never watched a Jets game don't know who Jeff Smith is, and that's okay. Yeah, you don't need to. You don't need to. He's a special teams player.
I've never heard of that human being.
They outsnapped Elijah Moore. He had 4 snaps in the first half, 10 for the game. I mean, what is there to say here, Jay?
Well, I mean, whose fault is this? Like, you're the Jets guy.
Everything was fine until you jumped aboard.
Yeah, I jumped on the Jets bandwagon.
It's not mine. I've been here for 30 years.
My Bill shirt is going to sink Josh Allen's MVP.
Oh, my God, man.
I mean, look, Zach Wilson coming into the season, last year, in terms of like what goes into setting spreads at bookmakers, Zach Wilson was the worst quarterback in the league, and worst starting quarterback in the league. And then he looked better when he came back. He was more game manager. He wasn't killing them or anything. But then no Breece Hall. You have to start putting the game more in his hands. And the killer is that if they just get that pick 6 against the Patriots, they go up 17-3 into half, then you never have to see the full Zach Wilson experience because they're just going to run the ball. But instead, I mean, some of these interceptions are just comical, just Keystone Cops type stuff from Zach Wilson. And yeah, I don't know. Like, why isn't Elijah Moore playing? I don't get it. Do you explain it?
It feels like partially a disconnect from the coaching staff, which is obvious. I mean, you don't play Jeff Smith and Braxton Berrios significantly more than Elijah Moore if there's not a disconnect there. The football answer to it, if you really want one, is that with Corey Davis out, they need a big blocking wide receiver out there because all they do is try to run the ball. So Denzel Mims got those snaps, which doesn't give you more hope for Elijah Moore. So, Lawrence, when I look at it like that, this is a team that when things are going right, they run the ball. That's all they do.
You're right.
Michael Carter did somehow salvage 10 fantasy points in this game really because of the 4 checkdowns. Is he a running back, though, that you can trust? If Wilson is turning the ball over and takes them off their run mode script, what does that do for Carter and to a lower degree James Robinson?
Yeah, and, you know, he was like one of the hottest players to throw in the flex this week. But New England's a tough matchup there.
That's a good point.
But then next week, you get Buffalo.
Doesn't get easier.
Then you got to bye. And then you got New England again. So that's like 4 weeks where we like, dang.
Are we just hiding?
Was that fab worth it? Yeah. Was it worth spending half my money up? So you got that there. Also, shout out to Denzel Mims, too. 76 yards, a career high for him in receiving yards. We got to recognize that. As far as Elijah Moore, like you said, if you still have him, you might as well wait the however many hours we got to the trade deadline because clearly this man said, hey, I don't know. I ain't getting the ball. Clearly disgruntled. They had him active, and they just said, sit your ass down on the bench. We're going to play Jeff Smith. But, yeah, man, it's wild over there for the Jets right now. After one loss.
Right, yeah. They're 5-3.
All it took was,
Jay's already off.
All it took was one loss for, you know.
Yeah, I think the sneaky thing with the Jets, and it's not sneaky to Jets fans like me and Connor, but it will be to everyone else. It's just like the offensive line now might just be at the point where it's just not viable with Vera Tucker down, with Becton down, obviously. Like, that's the other thing. It's not just Breece Hall down. To lose Vera Tucker as well, that's a big loss. Yeah,
they need to make a move at the trade deadline if they can because that's a unit that's just having a lot of problems. We are going to take a break. Obviously, though, great having Lawrence here from Roto World at Lord Don't Lose. Please follow him. When we are back, we go from Sunday Scaries to the Weekend Warriors with Pat Kerrane.
Sad one. Is it time to drop Kyle Pitts?
I get the question. I don't think it's time to drop. I mean, who are you dropping him for? Like, I get it. Listen, he's been brutal. He's scored 1 touchdown this entire year. He scored only 1 touchdown in America in his entire career. They don't want to throw. They only threw 13 times. But, again, the bar for fantasy relevancy at tight end is so low, and he is so talented. He is. I'm probably hanging on to him because here's what I will tell you. I mean, you use like a 3rd-round pick on him. If you drop him, and then all of a sudden he gets hot and somebody else picks him up, you're gonna be like, oh my God. You're gonna drive yourself crazy.
That was Matthew Berry on yesterday's Fantasy Football pregame live from Buffalo. No Berry today. He's trick-or-treating all day. The ball's rifle.
He's out.
Yeah, respect. I totally get it. But we welcome in Roto-World's Pat Kerrane. Pat, always great to have you here, man. And you get to talk about the Weekend Warriors. Yeah. We had Lawrence on for this is what was terrible over the weekend. Now we bring the vibes back. And we'll start with Kyle Pitts.
Yes.
Credit to Barry. Before he got all that candy, Halloween candy, and he said, do not drop Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, 9 targets. That's unheard of for Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts with 9 targets, 5 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown for 19 points. Finishes as tight end 3 in scoring in Week 8.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a rough drop if you dropped Kyle Pitts this week. Finally gets his 2nd touchdown on American soil. The thing about Kyle Pitts is he is being targeted at a high rate when you look at the context of the Falcons' offense. Only Mark Andrews has a higher target per route. Kyle Pitts also has the highest average depth of target among tight ends. That combined, high target rate, deep targets, that's a valuable role, but you need passing attempts. The issue here going forward is that we did get some passing attempts, but we got them in a game where they went to overtime. There were a ton of plays overall. This was still a very run-heavy team this week, minus 13% pass rate over expected. Relative to game script, super run-heavy. That was ahead of only the Panthers, Bears, and Titans this week. So I think as we move forward, are we going to get as many plays? Because they're still going to run, and when they're ahead in games, Kyle Pitts has just 0.5 yards per route run, which is terrible. And the Falcons have the 2nd easiest strength of schedule the rest of the season.
Yeah, my concern with the Falcons is that they might just be too good. And they might be too good for Kyle Pitts and Drake London to really properly live. And they're going to get away with continuing to run the ball. Like their next 5 weeks, Chargers, at Panthers, Bears, at Commanders, Steelers.
You're not scared?
No, they're not going to be like 6-point dogs in any of those games or anything. So they're going to be able to continue to run the ball and do what Arthur Smith wants to the detriment of America.
So let me ask you, as a man who instantly traded Kyle Pitts as soon as he caught 1 touchdown this year, I begged somebody to take him. Somehow got Chris Olave back. Nobody cares.
Okay.
This is a great week for him. Do you buy in, or because of everything we've just heard, especially the strength of schedule, do you try to sell high on Kyle Pitts if you have a decent tight end on the bench?
I think so. I think you're trying to, if you can get any value, like he was tight end 3 in scoring in Week 8, if you want someone who's going to trade for that level of value, then I would do it because I don't think he's going to produce at that point, and then you can just ride with the Irv Smiths of the world or whoever if you can get something useful back. But I just think that you still have to continue to start him every single week because he's Kyle Pitts, because the tight end position is so shallow, but you never feel good about it.
I need some trade advice from you to get Chris Olave back for Kyle Pitts. That's pretty nice.
Person was very desperate. And they had great wide receivers. It was really, really lucky trade. I swear I'm not in the league full of idiots. I promise. All right, a fantasy-rich game, Pat. The Cardinals and Vikings, or at least it turned out to be a fantasy-rich game. DeAndre Hopkins continues his return. NFL's a top 5 wide receiver. This offense actually has a little bit of structure, not a lot, but with Hopkins back. 13 targets, 12 catches, 159 receiving yards. He just goes off in this game. As Arizona's not a good football team, we know that, but this actually looks like an aerial offense that's finding a little bit of form.
It does, and he trails only Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and A.J. Brown in yards per route run since his return. Like I outlined with Pitts, the per route stuff's great, but you need passing volume. The Cardinals have been a run-first team this year, but with Hopkins back, they actually have been pass-first in those 2 games, across those 2 games. So I think we actually do have the arrow pointing up on Hopkins. He's looking like the engine of their passing attack.
Yeah, what the hell happened to DeAndre Hopkins last year? He didn't get to 90 yards once in the entire season. Now he's just back to looking a lot like DeAndre Hopkins in Houston with Deshaun Watson throwing him the ball. I think he's just a locked-in top 10 wide receiver going forward until proven otherwise. Like this target share, and also it's not like they're just, it's not just purely volume. Like he's making DeAndre Hopkins type plays. The touchdown was absurd. Unreal. So I think, I didn't think that he had this still in him, but apparently he does.
Good supplements for DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, seemingly.
Quietly in this game, Rondale Moore, 8 targets, 7 catches, 92 yards. Going back and watching these, 3 were screens, 3 were when he was in the slot, 2 were out wide. Pat, we talked before about he needs to be in the slot to produce, but he's only in the slot half of this game.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, he was in the slot for 52% of his snaps. So I feel like you take this, you bank this, but then you hope he goes to the slot. You hope Robbie Anderson is playing more. He hasn't really played that much in 2 weeks with the Cardinals, really hasn't played much at all. We did have A.J. Green playing in this game. He didn't play last week, but that, again, didn't really help Rondale Moore be like a full-time slot receiver, which is where I think you want him. Greg Dortch still playing a lot. I do think eventually we get Robbie Anderson on the outside, Rondale Moore in the slot, and then maybe this is a little bit more bankable.
DJ Moore, huge game, guys. It's been a brutal start to the year for DJ Moore for the most part. We're finally seeing a little bit of bounce back. 11 targets, 6 catches, 152 yards. In maybe what was the craziest game of the season, let's watch DJ Moore's game-tying touchdown at the end of this one. I mean, and P.J. Walker.
They're down 6 at the moment. Clock winding down. P.J. Walker throws it 150 yards in the air. And there's DJ Moore in double coverage coming down with it. Unbelievable. And then he loses the game right here. Why'd you take your helmet off, DJ? I got a 20-1 Panthers ticket for the division, which you've just ripped up in flames the moment you took your helmet off. Unbelievable. And then Pinheiro blows the 48-yarder, and then he's so shook from that he blows the 33-yarder in overtime as well. Don't jump into the stands, DJ. He's got a game to win. The game's tied.
It's not even a home game.
Oh. And then just narrowly misses the 48-yard extra point after. Like, I think that, I can say this with confidence, that is the worst 152-yard, 1-touchdown game that anyone has ever had in the history of the NFL, because it literally cost them the game with that touchdown at the end.
We like overtime. We like overtime in fantasy.
Yeah, overtime is good for fantasy. I think the big picture here, guys, and Pat, I'll start with you, is with P.J. Walker in, I mean, we know what quarterback has done to this franchise for a long time now. I think with P.J. Walker in, does this bring DJ Moore back to life, consistently?
Yeah, I think it's certainly helping. If you look at just his yards per route run on first read throws in the 3 games that he's had with Walker, he's trailing only A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, and Tyreek Hill.
It's good company.
Only A.J. Brown seeing a higher target percentage on those first read throws. That's showing you that this offense is designed to run like entirely through DJ Moore. This is still the Panthers. They were still very run heavy. They're actually more run heavy than the Falcons were last week in this game. So, and that's been a trend. They've shifted towards a very run heavy approach under Steve Wilks. This is going to be kind of a bumpy ride due to that, but he is at least the target dominant number 1 option on his team that we drafted him to be.
Yeah, the whole thing with P.J. Walker over Baker Mayfield was that he's different to Baker Mayfield, so there's variance, and you're just begging for variance with the DJ Moore situation, and now we've gotten it.
The Miami Dolphins offense with Tua back under center, I mean, this is an offense that explodes. They have an incredible wide receiver duo. Tua finishes as QB1 in Week 8, 3 touchdowns, but you could argue he should have had a 4th, and let's hear what Tua's favorite touchdown was in this game.
Yeah, the one I really liked, I would say, was Trent Sherfield's. I think they took away his touchdown. I think they took that one away. Do we agree? 1, 2, 3, 4. Do we agree? I don't know. 5, 6, 7. So Trent, there's about like 6 people, and 12 people raised their hands to say yes. So, all right.
Tua discussing Trent Sherfield's touchdown that was called down at the 1. Could have been a 4-touchdown day for Tua. But more importantly, guys, and Jay, starting with you, I mean, with this wide receiver duo, with the genius that is Mike McDaniel, and matchups like this, do you start Tua every single week at this point?
You do. Also, I love the personality Tua showed there. A little humor Tagovailoa.
Yeah. There we go. He could join this desk.
Yeah, exactly.
With all the jokes we've had today.
Tua's locked in. He's a QB1 going forward. The top 7 QB in that range, I think, like slightly ahead of the Justin Fields of the world, certainly ahead of the Tom Bradys of the world at this point. And we've seen that McDaniels, he will throw the ball. They're still obviously using Raheem Mostert a fair bit, but just with Hill and Waddle, that's the best receiver duo in the league. And Tua is reaping the benefits.
Yeah, it really is. And Tyreek Hill, the thing about him is that you cannot take him away. He's 5th in the NFL in yards per route run against double teams per PFF. He obviously leads the league in yards per route run. He's having this incredible season. I think emblematic of that, he split a double team on 3rd and 13 in this game. Tua hit him for a 36-yarder. He was immediately by both defenders. And you look at, Jalen Waddle, you can't take him away either. 4th in yards per route run, 3rd against double teams. So it's not even pick your poison. Both these guys are going to go off against you.
Tyreek having an unbelievable year. I mean, when you just compare the pace he's on compared to Calvin Johnson's record-setting year, as we show it right here, it's truly absurd. I mean, Tyreek is on pace right now to break this record by a pretty healthy margin. When you hear and see that, Jay, should he be the favorite for Offensive Player of the Year?
Yes, he should, and he's not, and that's a mistake. By my pricing, he should be like plus 350. The market is double that effectively. Tyreek Hill's the best, not just wide receiver in the game, he's the best skill position player in football right now. I don't think it's even particularly close with how he's playing. They're moving him all around as well. He's playing in the slot, he's playing out wide, he is unguardable, and he's the best wide receiver.
Staying in Florida, a different offense, though, in Jacksonville Jaguars, who were in London. They traded James Robinson earlier in the week. We knew that was handing the keys to the car for Travis Etienne. 27 touches. This is new ground for Travis Etienne. He did not get that kind of work at Clemson when he was a first-round caliber prospect. He has not gotten that work in the NFL. Made good use of it, Pat. 162 yards, touchdown, over 25 points on the day for Etienne. I know their record's bad. They are not playing good overall right now. But Etienne, it seems sustainable that he could be a top 10 back going forward.
It really does, and it's kind of like maybe a little Saquon Barkley-esque where you're looking for big plays on a bad team. And I mentioned Saquon Barkley because the only running back right now over the course of the season that has a higher snap share than Etienne's had over the last 2 weeks. Etienne, 79% snap share last week, 80% 2 weeks ago. He has elite usage right now. He's getting used in the passing game. He can rip off big plays. I mean, it is wheels up for Travis Etienne.
Yeah, I mean, he could be a top 5 running back going forward. I think that's definitely in play. You just worry that Jacksonville's season is teetering on the brink of being completely done. At the same time, they still are in the AFC South, so your season is never done until it's mathematically done. And they do have 2 more games against Tennessee, which maybe can revive their season. But in any case, they're not going to bench Etienne in 3 weeks or anything. That would be more a Week 18 situation. But yeah, I mean, he looks like the guy that he was drafted to be.
And they need to him and Lawrence obviously played together in college, but they need to get them working together consistently also in the pass game at some point in this offense as well. So I think you're pretty safe with Etienne for the rest of the regular season, the rest of the fantasy season. We're going to take a break. Great having Pat here, Pat Kerrane. To go through his article to walk through every single week on the show, so I'm sure we're going to see you soon. When we are back, a little Monday Night Football prop action for both of you. The action never stops at BetMGM. Sign up now using bonus code BERRY, and your first wager is risk-free, up to $1,000. Simply download the BetMGM app today or go to BetMGM.com and enter bonus code BERRY to make your first wager risk-free, up to $1,000. Let's take a look at the most bet Monday Night Football props on the board here, Jay. Are you fading the public on any of these, or do you like where they're heading?
Joe Mixon, we're going to talk about to score first touchdown. He's the most popular bet, plus 600. Don't mind that. I wouldn't be betting Nick Chubb to score anytime touchdown, minus 250. That's, there's a lot of juice there. Tyler Boyd, under 62.5. minus 120 on the receiving yards. I guess that's a nice kind of fade the expectation that Jamar Chase, his absence leads to a significantly heavier workload for Boyd. So, yeah, I think Joe Mixon would be my favorite of those 3.
All right, time for last call here. Those are the most popular props we've seen from the public, but Jay and I have some of ours first. Jay, I'll start with you. What are you looking at in this game?
Taking that man, Joe Mixon, over 67.5 rushing yards. Connor, no Jamar Chase. Think that Zach Taylor deep in his soul, he just wants to run the ball. Even if it's just 3 yards a carry, that's what he wants to do. Now he's going to have more of an excuse to do it. The Browns have the 2nd worst rushing defense in the NFL by DVOA. Only the Texans are worse. We saw what happened yesterday to their rushing defense. So I think that Joe Mixon's going to get 20 carries. I think he's going to go over 67.5 rushing yards.
I'm kind of piggybacking off of your thought process of this team going run heavy. I think they will have tight ends on the field very often. So I like Hayden Hurst. You could stack it. You could pick one. Hayden Hurst over 3.5 receptions. Those are Jamar Chase targets They got to go somewhere.
Yes.
And we know Boyd's going to get his. We know Higgins is going to get his, as much as it feels like the public was down on Boyd with that under receiving yards bet. But I also like Hurst over 37.5 receiving yards. If you think he scores a touchdown in this game, it's at plus 150.
Yep.
So a lot of I'm calling it value around Hayden Hurst. Where are you at?
Yeah, I like Hayden Hurst. I'm a big Hayden Hurst guy.
Yeah.
He's overperformed based on expectations. I think he'll get involved, certainly with Chase out. Do you like the Bengals -3 tonight, Connor?
I do. I think the Browns secondary has had such a nightmarish season. The safeties aren't tackling. The corners aren't communicating, as we saw the meltdown against the Jets, and it's carried on from there. So I'm leaning with the Bengals. I actually think that line should be closer to 4.5, 5.5.
Yep, it's trending towards 3.5, so you can still get -3. That is definitely a good bet. I think this is it for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, the Browns season hanging on the ropes here in a massive division game, and it feels like the Bengals have gotten going. All right, a happy Halloween on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. He is Jay Croucher. Jay, what are you being tonight?
I'm going to dress up as Barney.
Barney?
Yeah, I'm going to go with my 2-year-old's Barney. I'm going to be bigger Barney as well.
Okay.
Right.
All right. I'm Connor Rogers.
What a way to go out.
We will catch you tomorrow here on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, okay? Respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.